Hey, I'm Eric from Spiral 16. Thank you everybody on the web for tuning in at home or at work or wherever you are. It's really early here, but on the West Coast I know it's even earlier, and hopefully a lot of you will be streaming this online, so who knows when you're going to see it. But today we're going to talk about this really great project that Spiral 16 was a part of. We were partners on the Republican National Convention Social Media Command Center. Now, this was not something that the the GOP party actually had us put together. This was something where all of the partners came together and were employed by Tampa Bay and Company. So Tampa Bay is actually looking to take all of the thousands and thousands of people that were streaming into Tampa during the RNC, during the Republican National Convention, and turn them into people that were excited about Tampa Bay and help them with anything that they needed while they were in town, and become really what's kind of to be considered a social concierge. So the first question is, why would anybody create a social media command center? And the real answer that we found in doing it not only in Tampa Bay but also one in Kansas City at the Major League Baseball All-Star Game is that there really isn't anything better for event marketing. And what this does is it creates a back channel so that you can talk to the people that are attending your event and you can help answer any kind of questions that they might have. A lot of people will use hashtags, and they'll have like branded hashtags, and they'll encourage people to use those during the conference or during the event, the convention, but really the conversation is not focused on the event itself, but rather all the things surrounding it. And so in both cases that we've done a social media command center, it's been for the tourism industry. So this is a photo actually from Tampa Bay's social media command center, and it was the first of its kind at any kind of political convention. So also a social media command center allows you to create conversation. And you can see right here on this slide that somebody is basically kind of throwing out there, it looks like she's about to go clubbing. What is there to do in Tampa Bay? Seriously? Well, she found out somebody was listening. And you can tell from this slide that right away she's like, oh, okay. All right, let's do this. And that's one of the things, one of the really great advantages of having a social media command center is that there are people listening. And just when you respond to somebody's needs, all of a sudden it makes them feel really great. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So offering helpful advice to people to create an overall better experience is key. And you can see the slide in the lower left-hand corner there. We have somebody spreading the word. And so what they did was the Visit Tampa Bay Twitter account spread the word to all these people. They're going to be listening. This is going to be happening. You can get your questions answered and talk to people. Pivot's doing something actually really similar right now with Ask Pivot. So if you use the hashtag Ask Pivot, they'll be able to give you advice on where to go during lunch or what's happening, best place to catch a cab, that kind of stuff. So here, Visit Tampa Bay is also sending people to the zoo. This is actually a really great slide because it shows a couple people that just weren't expecting it at all, right? One person's getting referrals for different cab companies, and the other person is getting advice on arriving early. And of course, at the RNC, that was a really big issue. Another thing is that you can direct web traffic to all of the pre-approved websites, all the assets, all the social assets that you've put together for your event. It really helps because you've got now a group of people who are taking this information that you're putting out there and spreading it all over the internet for you. And we'll see examples of that a little bit later. And they're all going to the places where you want them to go. This is something we didn't anticipate, but it allows you to generate enormous mainstream and online press coverage. And you can just see from some of the examples here all of the crazy amount of people that wanted to be involved in this social media command center and find out what it was really about. And then what we do, it also allows you to measure the digital and social impact of the event. So Spiral 16's role outside from keyword strategy at the beginning was to look at the entire thing and measure the keywords and find out within all of this political conversation, what are people saying about Tampa? And it also allows you to create and strengthen relationships in the community. These are just some of the people that came on as partners. And you can see it's a huge amount of companies in town, especially when you've got an event that's going to require a lot of local support. having all those people rally behind you is really great. You can turn people into brand advocates, like this guy right here. He's leaving Tampa Bay. He says his stay was really comfortable. He's spreading the word. That's great news. Now, whether or not we were able to actually look at the amount of money that was spent and talk to all the people about the economy in Tampa, we're not 100% on that, obviously, and especially we can't monitor it, but right here, you can see people are talking about where they went and how great it was. It also allows you to position the event and all the people associated with the event as forward thinkers. And then this is just another example of that. And we'll get into the rainy day RNC thing, but basically they were called out for having a case study in awesome crisis management, which is really cool. So, in Tampa Bay, I'm going to take a drink real quick. With a tropical storm approaching and political negativity swirling all over the place, there was so much stuff in the media about this possible hurricane and all the negative stuff that goes along with any kind of political talk in general. What the Social Media Command Center did was really turn that around, and they were able to create an overwhelming amount of positive civic conversation. And this is a snapshot of the sentiment towards the end of the Republican National Convention, which is a lot different than what it looked like when we first started monitoring. There were a ton of stories being published about, you know, the Occupy protests and things like that. You know, is Tampa going to be able to handle it? That kind of stuff. And I think they really, really turned it around. Our two main partners on this were Barclay, REI, and Tampa Bay and Company. So what do you need? You don't have to have this, but what they had was a pretty great setup. So they had 6 dual monitor listening workstations, 6 engagement workstations, and 7 large monitors. Now, here at Pivot, with the #Pivot hashtag, what they're doing is they're just monitoring Twitter. They're just on Hootsuite or whatever. And if your crowd is small, that's very easy to do. And if, of course, they're going to be using the approved hashtags, which is something that they don't always use. What we were trying to do was capture conversation about anybody who was talking about Tampa Bay during the Republican National Convention. And they're not always going to brand it with a hashtag. The staff, over 60 volunteers from all of the local partners and local areas in town. These were all people sitting at these desks loaded up with great information, ready to promote the brand and pushing content out to people. This is what the map looks like. So we had managers, curators, and engagants. And this is basically the setup from where the information would start, how it would get filtered through, and then how that information would eventually go out. Our listening strategy started with the managers. So the managers were monitoring keywords that people were most likely to use online. You can see from this list that that's not always easy, and there is a ton of challenges involved, especially when you have something like the RNC, where there's going to be 2 different kinds of discussion. There's going to be people that want to talk about the GOP, and they want to talk about the convention, and then there's also going to be people from all over the world monitoring this hashtag and talking about politics, even though they're not actually in Tampa. We're going to pick up some of that chatter, and we wanted to weed that out. So there was a lot of stuff that just got weeded out that they didn't have to respond to. Associated concepts, economic development, parking, dining, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. We were able to silo those all separately so that people could respond to those efficiently and have the information that those people needed at their fingertips. Exclusions, these were just a lot of sports teams and things like that that were also coming up as popular matches with Tampa Bay, and we had to exclude all that because that was also stuff that we didn't need to see. The workflow was that the managers would send things to the curators. So the curators would respond on blogs and the Facebook page and things like that, but then the curators would move things on. So they would determine the sentiment and the probable influence of tweets. They would determine the category and decide, you know, what exactly are we responding to here, and who am I going to send this to, because different people were armed with different assets. And then they would pass that information along to the engagants. So the engagants would do, they were the people with the boots on the ground, right, the Twitter strategy. These are people in front of their computers responding as Visit Tampa Bay. And if they wanted to, they would always brand things with the proper hashtags, but if they wanted to, If something was more of a personalized message, they were also encouraged to use their initials as well, so that people would understand that there's actually a person talking here and not just a company. So the goal of the measurement strategy was pretty simple for us. It was compare sentiment and conversation trends before the RNC with those after the RNC. And again, we're just looking for Tampa Bay related chatter. So we're weeding out all the other stuff that we don't need to see, and we're just looking for people that are reflecting an opinion about Tampa Bay itself. So using our correlation scores and all of the different silos that I talked about earlier, we divided the chatter up into 6 different categories, and this is how it played out. One thing that we learned was flexibility is key. So the hurricane was coming to town. It was downgraded to a tropical storm. It was then kind of downgraded to a thunderstorm, if you will. And essentially what we did is we offered the hashtag rainy day RNC because the Republicans had already canceled Monday's event. And they said, you know, we're just going to be safe. So Monday was a day that everybody had free, 16,000 journalists and whoever else was in town, to explore Tampa. And that was really great because they were running around the town, what am I going to do? So we offered up the hashtag rainy day RNC, put out a press release, encouraged people to use it. And the chatter just for the rainy day RNC in terms of the entire event, it might seem small, but 4% of people that actually adopted the hashtag and used it is pretty great. And then of course they got that great write-up about being a case study in crisis management. So turning that around. Local voices were joining in like crazy, and so what we found is that not only the people that were supposed to be promoting it were talking about it, but all of the other local social media influencers, so to speak, picked up on this. They saw the chatter, and they immediately wanted to chime in and get in on the positive vibes, so they start doing the work for you. And when you've got people with a lot of followers and a lot of influence and you know, helping out, that's really great. One thing that we didn't quite understand or weren't ready for was the amount of mainstream news that was generated. They had VIP tours like crazy going in there, and there was just a nonstop media blitz. And these are you know, people coming in with video cameras, and they love the high-tech setup. They see all that, and they all of a sudden your message is getting spread that Tampa Bay's listening, and it was all over the place. Photo sharing, I mean, obviously Instagram is big, and obviously everybody's taking pictures on their phones. This is actually a list of the top domains that were brought back that were producing content about Tampa Bay during the convention. And as you can see, there's some approved you know, things coming from the company itself. Visit Tampa Bay, their blog, 2012 Tampa, but there's also tons of people taking pictures and sharing them, and Instagram was a big part of that. And these are just some of the great images. Of course, I love this photo because all these really, you know, creative and cool images of the town, and then you've got that one in the middle bottom there of a bunch of people standing around computers. But you would be surprised at how many people wanted to go into the command center and take a picture and show everybody what that looked like, because, you know, it's new. Volume captured, this is the amount of conversations that were actually captured and filtered. We had a lot of filtering to do. 192,000 conversations were reviewed, and for the social media command center, that meant that 766 were coming in an hour. The amount of tweets and posts that were sent is 4,400. 1,900 was the actual direct engagements, so that is when somebody else was actually talking to another person on Twitter, as opposed to just promoting a hashtag or promoting a link somewhere. So overall, there was about 6,400 posts in response. But basically what happened is as the RNC wound down, the momentum, the public sentiment turned very positive. And like I said, everybody just wanted to get in on the deal. So 46% right before it started. Afterwards, 89%. And again, this seems like a ridiculous amount of positive sentiment, but you have to remember that we were filtering out all of the negative political chatter. So this really was what Tampa Bay, their ecosystem, looked like during the convention. And even Hulk Hogan got in on it, which was crazy. So all of a sudden, Hulk Hogan is on ABC talking about the top 10 things to do in Tampa. So it was just more crazy stuff. Getting solid reviews online. There's tons of stuff in here. The 60 people that came through and did VIP tours, that was a big part of it as well. You've got all the local businessmen and leaders in town. And basically the bottom line is that success was bigger than the social media command center. It was really about proving that Tampa is listening and that Tampa is a great place for tourism, that they're an economic leader, and they're a great place to host conventions. And if you narrow all of this down, the strategy is very simple. All this stuff sounds really complicated, but it's just listening, responding, and measuring. And that's really what the core of it is. And I think that this can be applied to events of any size. It doesn't have to be something with 60 volunteers and multiple TV screens at a huge convention. And I think Pivot's proving that today. So it can be done really at any level. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks to you guys for coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, cheers.